Picture this, it's 1943. The fate of the world is hanging by a thread. And somewhere in a bunker, a scientist is pitching bat bombs, another is defending concrete submarines, and a third is perfecting explosive horse manure. This isn't satire. This is the real World War II they never show you. Because behind the Hollywood myth of genius generals and flawless strategy, there were pigeons guiding missiles, plans to feminize Hitler with estrogen, and cardboard tanks that collapsed in the rain. Today we rip open the forbidden file. 40 facts so catastrophically stupid, you'll wonder how humanity survived it all. Forget what you thought you knew. Madness begins now. 1. Great Panjandrum, the giant rocket wheel. Ah yes, the classic British engineering marvel that was supposed to win the war but ended up becoming a blooper reel. What if I told you the Brits designed a weapon that was basically a giant wheel of death powered by rockets? Picture this. 2 massive wooden wheels, 10 feet in diameter, connected by a cylinder packed with explosives. The propulsion, rockets strapped around the wheel's rim. The theory was simple. Roll this monster toward the beach defenses at Normandy and boom, problem solved. Except during testing on a British beach, the rockets started detaching randomly, flying in every direction like drunk fireworks. Generals ran for their lives. Cameramen dove for cover. One test had the contraption chasing the very admiral supervising the project. Imagine being a top military official sprinting away from your own weapon. The Panjandrum never saw combat because, shocker, it was impossible to control and more dangerous to the Allies than to the enemy. It's basically a cartoon villain's weapon brought to life, only to realize cartoons don't translate well to reality. Tired of being lied to? Subscribe for the truth they never taught you. 2. Project Pigeon, birds guiding missiles. You've heard of cutting-edge military technology, right? Well, what if I told you the United States military seriously funded a project to let pigeons guide missiles? Not as a joke. This was real. Behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner led this brilliant initiative where pigeons were trained, through food rewards, to peck at a screen showing the target. Their pecks would physically adjust the missile's fins, keeping it on course. The kicker: the tests showed the pigeons were actually pretty accurate. These birds could do the job. But here's the thing. Eventually, someone in the room probably stood up and said, "Wait, we're trusting a multi-million-dollar weapon system to a bird's pecking instincts?" The project was canceled in favor of electronic guidance. Sanity finally pecked its way through. Imagine the pitch meeting. "Sir, we've developed a revolutionary guidance system." "Great, what is it?" "Birds." "I'm sorry, what?" "Hungry birds pecking screens." The fact that this almost became standard issue is both hilarious and terrifying. 3. Acoustic bombing with competing sirens. What if I told you that during the Battle of Crete, some pilots thought they could fight psychological terror with psychological counter-terror by blasting music and yelling insults? The Germans equipped their Stuka dive bombers with Jericho trumpets, sirens designed to terrify ground troops during bombing runs. Effective? Sure. But some British pilots decided the best response wasn't superior firepower, but superior noise. They flew near the sirens while screaming insults over open radio or blasting gramophone music at full volume from their cockpits. Commanders even considered equipping planes with external speakers to out-annoy the enemy. This is warfare devolved into a sound system competition, like teenagers seeing who can blast their car stereo louder. The idea of aerial combat becoming a literal battle of the bands is peak World War II absurdity. Forget dogfights. Let's have DJ battles at 20,000 feet. 4. Secret chemical experiments in St. Louis. Here's one that's less funny and more criminally stupid. What if I told you the U.S. Army secretly sprayed American citizens with chemicals in the 1950s and 60s using World War II-era thinking? They claimed they were testing defensive smokescreens against Soviet attacks. Noble, right? Except they deliberately targeted low-income, predominantly black neighborhoods without informing residents or getting consent. They exposed hundreds of thousands to zinc-cadmium sulfide, substances later linked to cancer and other health problems. This wasn't just dumb. This was a grotesque violation of human rights disguised as national security research. The government literally used its own people as lab rats, proving that sometimes the dumbest decisions aren't just tactically stupid, but morally bankrupt. Testing on your own population without consent isn't strategy. It's a war crime waiting to be acknowledged. 5. Inflatable tanks of the Ghost Army. What if I told you that some of the most crucial battles of World War II were won with rubber balloons and sound effects? The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, known as the Ghost Army, was a top-secret unit that used an impressive arsenal of deception. They deployed hundreds of inflatable rubber tanks, trucks, and artillery pieces that looked real from the air. They had powerful sound systems blasting recordings of troop movements and construction noise for miles. Fake radio networks transmitted misleading chatter. They even had actors dressed as generals making phony inspections. Their illusions successfully convinced the Germans that major Allied forces were positioned elsewhere, playing a crucial role in D-Day's success. They literally won battles with hot air, sound effects, and Hollywood-level theatrics. The Ghost Army proved that sometimes the best weapon isn't a gun, but a really good bluff. War is apparently 10% firepower and 90% smoke and mirrors. 6. Nazi concrete submarines. Yes, the classic Nazi engineering brain trust asking, what if we made submarines out of the material we use for bunkers? What if I told you that near the end of the war, facing critical steel shortages, German engineers proposed building submarines partially made of reinforced concrete? The concept was that concrete was abundant, cheap, and could be molded by unskilled workers. They built prototypes and conducted pressure tests. The fundamental problem? Concrete is extremely heavy and brittle under tension, the exact opposite of what you need in a submarine that must dive, maneuver, and resist depth charges. The prototypes were so heavy they could barely float when empty. Any minor damage would cause catastrophic cracks under water pressure. The project was abandoned after wasting precious resources trying to make rocks float. It's stupid because they ignored basic physics trying to build submarines from the same material used for terrestrial fortifications. Next up, airplanes made of lead. 7th Nazi Lebensborn program. What if I told you the Nazis genuinely thought they could breed a master race like they were creating a new line of show dogs? Heinrich Himmler's Lebensborn program set up special homes where women deemed racially pure were encouraged or forced to have children with SS officers. They actually believed they could selectively breed perfect Aryans based on superficial traits like blonde hair and blue eyes. This completely ignored the overwhelming influence of environment, culture, education, and the sheer complexity of human genetics beyond looks. It was a grotesque fantasy built on hate and pseudoscience, doomed from inception. Applying livestock breeding principles to humans based on a fundamentally wrong understanding of genetics, biology, and human nature is peak Nazi stupidity. They treated people like cattle and wondered why their eugenic utopia never materialized. Spoiler alert, genetics doesn't work like a character creation screen in a video game. 8. Soviet anti-tank dogs. Here's a tragic one that's brutally stupid. What if I told you the Soviets trained dogs to run under tanks carrying explosives, but trained them with the wrong tanks? They used starvation to condition dogs to associate food with the underside of tanks. The dogs wore explosives designed to detonate on contact with the tank's hull. The catastrophic error? They primarily used familiar Soviet tanks for training. In real battle, confronted by loud, unfamiliar German panzers, the terrified dogs often ran toward what they knew, the scent and shape of friendly Soviet tanks. Result? Devastating self-inflicted losses. They basically created weapons that turned against them due to a fundamental training mistake, sacrificing animals and their own soldiers alike. It's a perfect storm of desperation, poor planning, and tragic execution. Imagine explaining to your commanding officer that your anti-tank dogs just blew up your own tanks because you forgot to show them what the enemy's tanks looked like. 9. British advice: offer tea to enemy paratroopers. What if I told you that during the height of invasion panic in 1940, the British government issued public guidance suggesting citizens offer tea to German paratroopers? Alongside sensible advice was the astonishingly polite suggestion: treat them firmly but kindly and offer them tea if you have any. This perfectly encapsulates the famous British stiff upper lip and obsession with propriety, even facing armed invasion. The image of confronting heavily armed Fallschirmjäger with a request to put the kettle on is peak surreal wartime absurdity. One wonders if sugar was also recommended. It's gloriously stupid because only the British could think the appropriate response to enemy soldiers dropping from the sky is polite hospitality and a nice cuppa. Sir, there are Nazi paratroopers in the garden. Excellent, I'll fetch the Earl Grey. This is what happens when manners override survival instincts. 10. Operation Vegetarian, Anthrax Cattle Cakes. What if I told you the British manufactured 5 million poisoned cattle cakes filled with anthrax spores to drop on Germany? Operation Vegetarian's theory was that German livestock would eat the cakes, die of anthrax, enter the food chain, and cause a massive food catastrophe and disease outbreak. Millions of these lethal cakes were manufactured and stored on Gruinard Island in Scotland, which became so contaminated with anthrax, it remained quarantined for 48 years until decontamination in the 1980s. The plan was never executed because the war ended, but the island remained deadly for half a century. They created literally millions of death cookies for cows, contaminated an entire island in the process, and then never used them, leaving an environmental disaster that lasted decades. It's stupid because they weaponized baked goods, created a biohazard zone on their own soil, and achieved absolutely nothing except poisoning an island for generations. 11. Rudolf Hess's solo flight to Scotland. Ah yes, the classic tale of the Nazi official who thought he could personally end the war with a chat. What if I told you Hitler's deputy Führer secretly piloted a fighter plane by himself from Germany to Scotland, convinced he could negotiate peace? Rudolf Hess parachuted out near a duke's estate, hoping to facilitate talks, sprained his ankle on landing, and was promptly captured by a local farmer, armed with nothing but a pitchfork. Hitler furiously denounced him as delusional. The British were utterly baffled and simply imprisoned him for life. It's an impressive display of high-level rogue diplomacy ending in utter embarrassing failure. The second most powerful man in Nazi Germany literally flew solo into enemy territory thinking he could chat his way to ending World War II, only to be captured by a farmer with a garden tool. That's like the vice president parachuting into Moscow with a peace proposal and getting arrested by a babushka with a broom. 12. Humi Stink Bombs by the OSS. What if I told you the American intelligence agency developed a weapon whose sole purpose was making Nazis smell bad? The OSS created Humi, a stink bomb that wasn't about damage but pure psychological humiliation. Encased in a small pocket atomizer, it contained a chemical compound producing an incredibly potent and persistent smell strongly resembling human feces. The intended tactic was for agents to covertly spray German officers in public, hoping the resulting extreme social embarrassment and ridicule would shatter their morale and undermine their authority. The sheer pettiness and juvenile nature of this officially sanctioned weapon is truly something to behold. It's gloriously stupid because the U.S. intelligence agency spent time and resources developing a weapon that essentially turned enemy officers into walking porta-potties. This is psychological warfare at its most middle school level. Forget bombs. Let's just make them smell like a bathroom. 13. Soviet tachankas against German tanks. What if I told you the Soviets sometimes sent horse-drawn carts with machine guns against German panzers and Stukas? Facing devastating tank losses early in the invasion, the Red Army resorted to using tachankas, essentially farm carts or wagons with a heavy Maxim machine gun mounted on the back, usually facing rearward for covering fire during retreats. A relic from the Russian Civil War, these incredibly vulnerable contraptions were tragically outmatched by German tanks, artillery, and aircraft. It was a desperate, visually striking symbol of early Soviet struggles against the Blitzkrieg, highlighting the initial lack of modern equipment. It's tragically stupid because they were literally sending 19th century technology against 20th century war machines, resulting in predictable massacres. Imagine bringing a knife to a gunfight, except the knife is a horse and buggy, and the gunfight involves tanks and dive bombers. Desperation has limits, and this crossed them. 14. Explosive horse manure disguises. What if I told you British intelligence created bombs disguised as horse poop? The SOE developed explosives camouflaged as horse manure. The tactical brilliance. Nobody questions a random pile of dung near a checkpoint or supply route. Imagine the rigorous testing phase. Jenkins, rate the authenticity of this explosive equine evacuation on a scale of 1 to steaming fresh. The plan involved agents casually dropping these manure mines. Fortunately for everyone, especially agents handling them, Operation Brown Surprise, a name I just made up but fits perfectly, never saw mass deployment. Probably logistical issues, or maybe the sheer overwhelming ick factor finally dawned on high command. It's stupid because someone in a serious military meeting proposed and received approval to create bombs that looked like horse crap, and they had to pay someone to perfect the appearance of explosive excrement, the Special Operations Executive, where spycraft meets scatological artistry. 15. Nazi disintegrating zinc coins. What if I told you Nazi Germany minted money that literally fell apart in your pocket? As the war progressed and vital metals became scarce, Germany switched to minting coins from zinc. While saving copper and nickel, zinc proved a terrible choice for currency. It corrodes incredibly easily, especially with handling and moisture. These wartime coins quickly turned dull, pitted, gray, and sometimes literally crumbled in circulation. Imagine the economic confidence inspired when your small change is actively disintegrating in your pocket. It became a tangible daily reminder of the Reich's decaying resources and unsustainable ambitions. It's stupid because they created currency that self-destructed with normal use, undermining confidence in their own economy every time someone bought bread. Nothing says winning war effort quite like money that turns to dust before you can spend it. At least the inflation was literal and not just economic. 16. Aircraft identification playing cards. What if I told you the U.S. military's answer to identifying friend from foe at 300 miles per hour was playing cards? Special decks were printed featuring silhouettes of various Axis and Allied aircraft. While perhaps marginally useful for memorization during downtime, imagine consulting your deck during a frantic dogfight. Hold on, Luftwaffe Ace, is that the Messerschmitt Bf 109 on the Queen of Hearts or the Focke-Wulf 190 on the Jack of Clubs? Let me just shuffle through. It seems slightly less effective than rigorous training and immediate visual recognition under extreme stress. It's stupid because they expected soldiers under mortal fire to take time pulling out playing cards and searching for the right silhouette before shooting or being shot. This is like using flashcards during a final exam while the room is on fire. Sure, theoretically helpful, but practically useless when bullets are flying. Feeling betrayed yet? Hit subscribe. There's so much more they're hiding from you. 17. Japanese Fugo paper balloons. What if I told you Japan tried to win the war by launching thousands of paper balloons across the Pacific, hoping the wind would do their job? Forget bombers. Japan had balloons crafted from mulberry paper, filled with hydrogen, and carrying incendiary and anti-personnel bombs. The genius plan relied entirely on the jet stream to carry these flimsy contraptions over 5,000 miles to set American forests ablaze and terrorize the population. It's like trying to win by playing the world's most dangerous game of atmospheric lottery. Most predictably vanished into the ocean. A few reached North America, tragically causing fatalities in Oregon. But as a strategic weapon, it was an expensive, ineffective, paper-thin dream that mostly fed fish and baffled meteorologists. It's stupid because they spent significant resources launching thousands of random paper balloons expecting wind to do the heavy lifting, with a success rate near zero. This is warfare via wishful thinking and favorable weather patterns. 18. Project X-ray, bat bombs. What if I told you the United States poured resources into strapping tiny napalm bombs to millions of bats? This wasn't science fiction. Project X-ray was a real military initiative. The plan: attach custom-made miniature napalm bombs with timers to Mexican free-tailed bats. Chill the bats into hibernation, load them into special canisters, drop these over Japanese cities at dawn. As the bats warmed up, they'd fly to roost in the eaves of Japan's primarily wooden buildings, then ignite, causing widespread chaos and fire. Testing proved the concept by having armed bats escape mid-trial and promptly burn down the American test facility to the ground. A fiery, furry no from Mother Nature herself. It's brilliantly stupid, because the first successful demonstration of the weapon was torching their own military base, proving it was effective but completely uncontrollable. Congratulations, you've created the world's first self-sabotaging incendiary device, courtesy of confused mammals. 19. Japanese I-400 submarines destroyed by paranoia. What if I told you the US Navy deliberately sank revolutionary submarine technology because they were scared the Soviets might see it? The Japanese I-400 class submarines were engineering marvels, the largest subs built until the nuclear era, each capable of carrying and launching 3 Aichi M6A Sarin attack float planes from a watertight hangar and catapult system. Their intended mission was a surprise attack on the Panama Canal locks. After Japan's surrender, the US Navy captured surviving A-400s, meticulously studied their advanced capabilities, a genuine underwater aircraft carrier. Then, fearing the technology would fall into Soviet hands as the Cold War brewed, deliberately scuttled them in deep water off Hawaii. A technological treasure destroyed by nascent superpower paranoia. It's stupid because they destroyed revolutionary tech that could have given them strategic advantage simply from fear the Soviets would see it, wasting an invaluable learning opportunity. Sometimes the dumbest decision is destroying genius because you're afraid someone else might copy your homework. 20. German wooden airfield and wooden bomb. What if I told you the Germans spent enormous time and resources building an elaborate fake airfield, only for the British to respond with the ultimate troll? Germany constructed an incredibly detailed decoy airfield in Holland made of wood. Wooden planes, wooden hangars, even wooden trucks, all designed to fool Allied reconnaissance and lure bombers away from real targets. British intelligence wasn't fooled for a second. Their response wasn't repeated bombing, but delivering the ultimate insult. They dispatched a single Mosquito bomber, which flew low over the pristine fake airfield and dropped one precisely aimed non-explosive wooden bomb painted with the inscription "Wood for Wood." The trolling level was legendary. It's hilarious and stupid because the Germans spent massive time and resources building a complete fake airfield only for the British to respond with a wooden joke, completely humiliating them. This is peak psychological warfare, responding to deception with mockery so savage it becomes historical legend. 21st British sticky bomb. What if I told you the British designed an anti-tank weapon that was more likely to stick to the soldier than the tank? The sticky bomb was a desperate infantry measure to combat tanks. Essentially, a glass flask filled with nitroglycerin covered with an extremely sticky substance, birdlime, encased in sheet metal, mounted on a handle. Peel off the tape, slap it on a panzer. Simple, except the adhesive was notoriously unreliable on dirty, dusty, or wet tank armor, common conditions, but loved sticking to the soldier's own wool uniform. Imagine the sheer heart-stopping panic of being physically attached to your own high-explosive anti-tank grenade while trying to run away under machine gun fire. Utterly terrifying design flaw. It's stupid because they designed a weapon more likely to kill its own user than the enemy, turning it into almost an involuntary suicide device. The sticky bomb, when your anti-tank grenade becomes pro-you dying. 22nd plan to feminize Hitler with estrogen. What if I told you British intelligence seriously considered chemically feminizing Adolf Hitler to stop the war? The idea wasn't assassination, but alteration, sneak estrogen into his food. They genuinely theorized that making the Führer biologically more female might curb his notorious aggression, perhaps make him more diplomatic, or at least give him a higher singing voice for those intense speeches. Putting aside the monumental challenge of tampering with the diet of the world's most paranoid dictator, the entire concept rested on profoundly bizarre and scientifically dubious understanding of hormones and personality. Would a slightly more estrogen-influenced Hitler have just called it all off? It's absurdly stupid because they thought they could stop the Holocaust and World War II with non-consensual hormone therapy based on completely wrong science about how hormones work. 23. SOE explosive rats. What if I told you British intelligence stuffed dead rats with explosives and the plan backfired spectacularly? The SOE's plan was deliciously devious. Obtain dead rats, carefully slit them open, stuff them with plastic explosives and a time fuse, sew them back up, and have agents discreetly place them in coal piles near German factory or locomotive boilers. An unsuspecting German stoker shovels coal along with the booby-trapped rodent into the furnace, leading to a devastating boiler explosion. Unfortunately, the very first shipment of these explosive vermin was intercepted by the Germans. The result wasn't mass sabotage, but mass paranoia. Suddenly, every dead rat was suspect, leading to nationwide rat inspection campaigns that wasted enormous amounts of German time and manpower. 24. Nazi occultism and the Ahnenerbe Institute. What if I told you that while the Allies were splitting atoms, the Nazis were funding expeditions to find Atlantis and consulting astrologers? Key Nazi regime figures, notably SS leader Heinrich Himmler, were deeply invested in bizarre occultism and pseudoscience. The SS Ahnenerbe Institute wasted significant resources funding expeditions to Tibet, searching for mythical Aryan ancestors, investigating hollow earth theories, consulting astrologers, and pursuing fringe ideas like world ice theory. This fascination with mysticism and rejection of established science, stemming from warped ideology, represented a significant and ultimately fruitless diversion of focus and resources from practical realities of fighting a modern industrial war. 25. Fanta, the Nazi beverage. What if I told you one of the world's most popular sodas was literally created with industrial waste during the Third Reich? Fanta, the globally recognized orange soda, owes its existence directly to Nazi Germany and World War II trade embargoes. When the war cut off Coca-Cola syrup supply to Germany, the head of Coca-Cola Deutschland, Max Keith, needed a new product to keep bottling plants operational. He improvised, creating a fruit-flavored soda using whatever scarce ingredients were available, often industrial leftovers like whey, a cheese byproduct, and apple pomace, fiber from cider pressing. He named it Fanta, derived from the German word for imagination. The brand thrived in wartime Germany and was later acquired by Coca-Cola globally after the war. It's ironic and stupid because one of the most popular drinks worldwide was created literally from industrial garbage during Nazi Germany because they couldn't get real ingredients. Your refreshing beverage has a surprisingly dark origin story. 26th. Mussolini's premature war entry. What if I told you Mussolini basically dragged Italy into a war they couldn't win just to sit at the winner's table? Benito Mussolini's decision to enter World War II in June 1940 was a spectacular example of opportunistic miscalculation. Convinced France was already defeated and Britain was on the verge of collapse following the German Blitzkrieg, he declared war hoping to make easy territorial gains and claim a seat at the victor's table. However, the Italian military was woefully unprepared for major conflict, plagued by outdated equipment, poor training, inefficient logistics, and questionable leadership. 27. Hitler's Wunderwaffen obsession. What if I told you Hitler literally bet the war on experimental superweapons instead of producing more normal weapons that actually worked? Hitler's late-war obsession with futuristic Wunderwaffen, wonder weapons, proved strategically idiotic. While technologies like the V-2 ballistic missile, Me-262 jet fighter, and advanced U-boats were groundbreaking, they consumed enormous resources, materials, fuel, skilled labor, research time desperately needed for mass-producing proven, effective weapons like the Panzer IV tank or St. G44 assault rifle, and basic supplies. 28. Donald Duck tax propaganda. What if I told you the US government basically admitted people would trust financial advice from a cartoon duck more than actual officials? Donald Duck became an unlikely weapon in the Treasury Department's arsenal. The 1943 Disney animated short, The Spirit of 43, commissioned by the government, features Donald struggling with his conscience, represented by a thrifty Scot and a wasteful zoot suitor, over whether to spend his paycheck or save it to pay income taxes. The cartoon explicitly frames paying taxes promptly as a patriotic duty essential for funding the war effort against Axis powers. 29. BBC coded messages. What if I told you the resistance was literally broadcasting their battle plans on public radio and the Germans couldn't do anything about it? BBC broadcasts to occupied Europe were more than just news and music. They were a vital espionage channel. Hidden within seemingly innocuous personal messages or musical programs were coded phrases understood only by resistance fighters. A line like "The owl hoots thrice at midnight" or "Uncle Henry's socks are blue" could signal specific sabotage orders, supply drop timings, warnings of German movements, or agent arrival confirmations. It turned everyday radio listening into a nail-biting exercise in secret communication, operating right under the enemy's nose. 30. Finland's contradictory alliance with Germany. What if I told you Finland fought alongside Nazis but refused to actually be Nazis? Finland allied with Nazi Germany as co-belligerents against the Soviet Union, who had attacked them previously. But here's the twist. Finland resisted German pressure and refused to implement anti-Semitic policies or deport their Jewish population, who largely survived the war. They fought alongside the Wehrmacht but rejected the Nazis' genocidal ideology. Finland basically said, "We'll help you fight Stalin, but we're not doing the genocide thing." Awkward alliance dynamics to the extreme. 31st French Maginot Line. What if I told you France built the perfect wall against World War I but forgot they were in World War II? The Maginot Line was an engineering masterpiece designed to stop invasion based on the last war. It stopped short of the Ardennes forest, wrongly deemed impassable by tanks. It prioritized static defense and lacked mobile reserves. The Germans simply drove around it. Billions of francs worth of very fancy speed bump that proved you can't win the next war by preparing for the last one. 32nd Battle of Los Angeles, mass hysteria. What if I told you Los Angeles shot thousands of anti-aircraft shells at nothing, killing their own citizens? In February 1942, fears of Japanese air raids caused panic. U.S. batteries unleashed over 1,400 shells into darkness at weather balloons or flares. Result? 0 enemy planes downed, but civilian deaths from falling American shrapnel. They literally fired at imaginary planes for hours. Peak wartime paranoia meets tragic friendly fire. 33rd Project Habakkuk, ice aircraft carrier. What if I told you the British wanted to build an aircraft carrier from ice but physics said no? Project Habakkuk envisioned a 2 million-ton behemoth from pykrete, frozen water and wood pulp stronger than concrete. It would be unsinkable. Prototypes proved it resisted bullets. But engineers realized keeping such a colossal ice structure frozen in the Atlantic would cost more than building several normal carriers. Thermodynamics vetoed this cool idea permanently. Let's build the ultimate archive of historical fails. If this video shattered your faith in wartime strategic thinking, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because trust me, history's closet is full of skeletons. Very, very dumb skeletons. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and remember, the truth is often stranger and stupider than fiction.